Sup, Dad?
Welcome to This Dad Reads, a bookish podcast spanning genres and fandoms. I'm your host, Jason, and author George Mann is back on the show to discuss his High Republic Phase 3 novel, The Eye of Darkness. Plus, we're debuting an expanded Last Current Next featuring contributions from the online book community. What is going on, my fandom friends? I hope everyone is doing well out there. I can't believe the year is already winding down. I hope you all have been keeping up with your reading goals. As I mentioned earlier on the show, and as I try to keep you all updated as I go, I set a reading goal of 60 books this year, and right now I'm sitting at 52 out of 60. So I'm pretty proud of that, I must say. It's been at times kind of a rough go of things, and I'm honestly considering lowering my goal, maybe by about 5 next year. Just because, obviously, I want reading to be fun. I don't want it to be stressful. And so sometimes having that number that I'm achieving, it stresses me out in a way that I don't want to have that. I want reading to be an enjoyable experience, as it should be. And it always is. But sometimes having that number in my mind can kind of mess with me. So I'm considering that. I would love to hear where you guys are in your goals for this year, and if you're considering either raising or lowering your book goals. So please let me know about that. I have got a packed episode today, and I am particularly excited to be joined once again by author George Mann. We are talking about his newest Star Wars book, The Eye of Darkness, which, as most of you probably know, is the very first novel in the High Republic Phase 3, and it is out everywhere in the world right now, today. This episode is coming out on release day, so I'm so excited that it is out in the world. I had the pleasure of reading it, but before we get too much into Eye of Darkness, I could just start talking about it right away, obviously, but before we do that, I'm really excited to kind of introduce an expansion of my Last Current Next segment. As you all know, I love to go over my Last Current Next and kind of just track what I'm reading with you guys. And I've had this idea brewing for a while to ask, some of my book community friends to contribute to it. And I hadn't really ever quite pulled it off, but I finally have. I achieved it. I'm so excited. And I want this podcast and the show to be a place where we can find connection. And that is the beautiful part about the online book community, is just the amazing people who are literally all over the world, who are just trying to find connection and talk about books and things that bring them joy, and having, just conversations about not just Star Wars books, but all books in general, from a variety of fandoms and genres. And so I'm so stoked that this all worked out. And like I said before, this show is not just mine, but it's ours. I want this show to feel like it's a place where the book community can come together and feel like we're doing something together. So now every month, it's not going to be just me talking about my Last Current Nexts. I am going to be having submissions from you, my book community friends. And so I asked a couple friends for some submissions on their Last Current Next. So without further ado, here are the community members' contributions about their Last Current Nexts.
Hey Jason, Jay here, aka The Rancor Reading Pit and Jay mentioned art. The last book I read was Star Wars, Tales of Light and Life. My current read, thanks to your recommendation, is Red Rising by Pierce Brown, and my next read will be Golden Sun by Pierce Brown, because I'm now obsessed with the series. Thanks!
Hi, I'm Christy.
And I'm Connor, and we're both from the Book Ascendancy podcast.
So my last read book was Most Wanted by Ray Carson. My current reads are Lords of the Sith by Paul S. Kemp and Hurricane Wars by Dia Galazon. And my next read is going to be Iron Flame by Rebecca Yoros.
So my last read was Percy Jackson and the Chalice of the Gods by Rick Riordan. My current read is The High Republic, The Eye of Darkness by George Mann. And my next read is going to be Star Wars Death Star by Michael Reeves and Steve Perry.
And you can find me at Admiral Reads.
And you could find me at Connor's Bookshelf.
Thank you so much to my book community friends for sending their Last Current Nexts. Jay, aka the Reading Rancor Pit, and Jay Manchan Art, as he mentioned. He's an awesome Star Wars artist and a book reader, avid book reader. And like he said, I convinced him to read Red Rising. I've converted another Howler, so he is full in the Red Rising universe right now. He's an awesome artist. He's a good friend, good guy. Please go check him out. Also, huge thanks to Christy and Connor of the Book Ascendancy podcasts. These two have been book friends of mine, online friends of mine, since the very start of my account. I can't even imagine a Star Wars book community without these two as a part of it. I'm super stoked for their Book Ascendancy podcast that they've recently launched. It's a great time, just two friends talking about books. They talk about other Star Wars media like TV shows. Definitely check out their podcast and all of their socials. I have linked Jay's, Christie's, Connor's, all of their socials and links to their products in the show description, so please go check that out. I guess it's my turn now, so let's jump into my last current next. So the last book that I read was, and get ready for it guys, The Woman in Me by Britney Spears. Yep, I'm jumping on the bandwagon. I love me a good pop culture biography. I actually bought this book for my wife for her birthday the week that it came out, and right after she finished it, I picked it right up because I am a 90s kid. I was raised in some of my formative years during those early 2000s, late 90s pop world, you know, the Britneys of the world, the NSYNCs of the world. So that was always on, that was just on the radio. That was a part of the pop culture at the time. And I am having, you know, kind of, obviously, who hasn't really followed Britney Spears' career? You kind of have to be living under a rock to like not know what's going on with her. So my wife and I joke that we're Team Britney. So first of all, I wanted to support her by grabbing that book. And, you know, she's had a rough life and a crazy journey, and I empathize with her a lot. And so no matter what you think about, you know, her or pop culture biographies, to me, it was just one of those reads where it was kind of a no-brainer. Like, I just wanted to read it. It's in the pop culture conversation, especially since my wife read it. It's a good way for us to connect and discuss. So it was definitely a good time. It's not a crazy hard read. It's a pretty simplistic one. You know, but it was still a good time. And like I said, I'm Team Britney all the way. The current book I'm reading is The Courtship of Princess Leia by David Farland. This was one of the most recent Essential Legends Collections paperbacks to come out recently. I got copies of that last wave sent from my friends at Random House Worlds, and I am always reviewing these books for Tatooine Times. It's kind of the way that I keep my toe in Legends. I have not read a lot of Legends books, though I say that, and I've read almost the entire Essential Legends collection, so I think I'm in the double digits. But I'm currently reading The Courtship of Princess Leia. Full disclosure, I found this book at a used bookstore like way earlier this year, and it's been on my bookshelf, my TBR, for forever. And so I technically have 2 copies of this book now, and so I am finally motivated to read it. I've wanted to for a long time, but book schedules and other things just kind of got in the way. So I'm not too far into that yet, but I hear that a lot of people have compared this to Princess and the Scoundrel, and I know there's some strong opinions about people who love The Courtship of Princess Leia and how it kind of is a precursor or another version of The Princess and the Scoundrel. So all things considered, I'm excited to read it. Though guys, in full honesty, the cover for this version is not my favorite. I'm always going to keep it honest. The cover art is very weird. Princess Leia looks like she's had a rough day. I don't know what's going on with that cover art, guys, but I'm excited to read the book. And the next book I'm going to be reading is another Essential Legends collection book, Annihilation by Drew Karpyshyn. I'm excited for this one. I have read a number of books by Drew and kind of chugging away through these next 4 books in this wave, so that's what I'm going to be reading next, and keep an eye out for reviews of The Courtship of Princess Leia and Annihilation very soon on TatooineTimes.com. Hey Casey, don't worry, I haven't forgotten about the George Mann segment. I know you're particularly excited about this one. I promise that we're getting to it. I just have one more thing I want to talk about, okay? Oh, Casey, he is understandably so excited to get to the Star Wars segment, as am I, but I just have to talk about one more thing before we get to that. So like I said before, I want this podcast to be a place where the online book community can find connection. And so what better way than to highlight a member of this very community every month? So I don't really have a name for this segment yet. All I know is I definitely wanted to talk about this person. If you are a part of the High Republic fandom anywhere online, Twitter, Instagram, you're probably aware of this guy and what he does. I'm talking about Q&A props the prop maker, Quentin. He has an Etsy store where he makes amazing Star Wars props, and he's a huge High Republic fan. He does lightsaber hilts. He recently released the Jedi Vector ship, which I need to get. But the thing that piqued my interest the most, he recently did a geode line of products, and I immediately bought those right away. He had a geode collection that includes a bookend, like an action figure, and then a magnet. And guys, we all love geode, right? Like I saw these products and I knew I just had to have them. So I recently got them. I featured them on an Instagram post recently. Please go check that out. But Quentin is just the nicest guy. He sent me the sweetest note in the package when I got it. And I just want to highlight him and shout him out and just say what an awesome job he is doing in this community. I know some of the authors have like held his things before. He was able to talk to the High Republic authors this year at Star Wars Celebration. So Quentin, keep it up. You are killing it. And I also have to say that today is a very special day. This episode is out on November 14th, and it is Quentin's birthday. So please go to Quentin's Instagram, which is Q&A Props, or find him on Twitter, X, whatever they're calling it, and wish him a very happy birthday. Quentin, happy birthday, my man. Keep up the awesome work. The community is a better place because you're in it. All right, KC, it's just about time, but let's just do a double check of everything to make sure that we're good to go to talk to George. So let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back talking with George Mann. And we're back. KC, it's time. Are you ready? Me too. So it's always a good day when a new Star Wars book is out in the world. And today's very exciting because, like I said before, The Eye of Darkness, which is the first adult novel in the High Republic, Phase 3 is out in the world. I was fortunate enough to receive an early review copy, and my written review is now up at thisdadreads.com, but I also had the privilege of being able to get George Mann back on the show to talk about the book and catch up since the last time we chatted. So roll the tape, Casey. Welcome back to the show, George. How's it going?
It's great. Thank you very much for having me again. Great to be
excited.
Here.
Yeah, you're my first official returning guest author on the podcast, so
wow,
congrats.
That's an honor. Cheers. I want a badge.
Right? Exactly. Obviously excited to have you here as today Eye of Darkness is out in the world, and we will definitely get to that. But first of all, since it's been a minute since we've chatted on the show, and we met in person actually at San Diego Comic-Con this year, I kind of wanted to just catch up a little bit and see how your summer went. How did those cons go for you? We chatted for a couple minutes in person, but since we've been on the show, you've been to Star Wars Celebration, San Diego Comic-Con, and now we're just full into fall, end of the year. So how are you doing? Like how has your year gone?
Thank you. I'm great. I'm great. I really am. It's been a whirlwind, you know. Like every year, I've been doing San Diego since 2015, skipping obviously the COVID years, and every year it gets. I think it can't get any better. It can't get any bigger, and it does. I always have a better, bigger time. I'm busier than ever, and you know, and Star Wars is a huge part of that, of course. You know, you mentioned Star Wars Celebration. I mean, that's got to be probably one of the highlights of my entire year. It was just amazing. I mean, the response from the fans. We had, you know, 4,500 people in a room there to hear us talk about books and comics. Mm-hmm. And that feels like a lifetime achievement. You know, it's like, you know, all these people care about books and they're here to talk about them. And, you know, and people were like, we were talking about characters' names. We were making announcements about what books were coming. I think that's when we first announced Eye of Darkness, actually, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And people were screaming in the audience and, you know, cheering. And the atmosphere was just electric. And, you know, I will never ever forget the experience. We did a fan meetup, like cosplayers meetup on the night, and I think it was the Saturday night. And we said, you know, come meet us outside, kind of 6:30, whatever it was. If anyone's dressed as any of the characters from the High Republic, we'll do. The authors are here. We'll do photo ops, and we'd love to meet you. And we all got together and we came out, and there were like 8 or 9 people stood there dressed in High Republic costumes, and they looked amazing. So we went over and started talking to them, and hey, this is great, we're really pleased. And then they were like, oh no, like we're just stood over here having a chat. You want to be down there? And we kind of looked around, and there was down like this big set of steps, like kind of amphitheater steps, and there were about 350 people, all dressed in High Republic costumes, all who'd come out to meet us and do photo ops. And it was just the most, when we were there for like 2 hours, we were just talking to everyone. People were bringing us like drawings and postcards and gifts they'd made, and we were signing books and taking photos, and it was just, I came away from that on a real high, because you realize how much this stuff means to people, and how much they value what you're doing, which is an amazing boost as a creator to know, people care.
Sure.
And it reminds you to take care with it as well, and to put your best work into it, because this is going to touch people's lives. It's not just throwaway entertainment. And not that I've ever considered it that, but I mean, it's just, I really haven't, I'm a huge fan myself. So, I see it as a real honor and privilege to write Star Wars, but, it's just, it was, I'd say it kind of a lifetime moment, a memory. And that's carried me through the year, really, because I've been super busy writing Star Wars most of the year. So, head down over the summer, and coming into the fall, getting kind of books written, and other projects, that are in the pipeline. And, it's been a good year. It's a good year.
That's awesome. I have to say too, I feel like book people and book fans, I feel like one of the place that community can happen for them easiest, and maybe just more, I feel like the place for them is kind of those cons, and I've started dipping my toe in them in the past couple of years, and it's so cool because I feel like book fans, and especially High Republic fans, we're a passionate breed, but we're different. We're bookish people. Like, we want to, most of the time, I'm not going to speak for everyone, but there's an introverted streak in us, and we just want to sit and read, and and socializing can be challenging for everyone on their best day. But I just feel like, from my own personal experience at Star Wars Celebration 2022, San Diego Comic-Con, when you're with your people, and especially like the bookish book community, it's such a special thing. So I can only imagine what that felt like on the creator side, and feeling that like love, like in person, and that's so cool.
It absolutely is, and you realize you're part of something. It's a community. It's not an us and them thing. So we're all in it together. We're writing for those people who are enjoying the books. That's it's amazing to be able to talk to people, and for them to come up and say, someone came up to me dressed as Salandra Show, one of kind of my original characters, from the, with carrying a shield and everything. And I was just
that's awesome.
Wow, wow.
Yes,
it's mind blowing.
Yes.
So yeah,
that's really cool. Well, I also have to say, since The Eye of Darkness is out, you have officially achieved, I don't know what to call it. It's not an EGOT. It's not, I don't know what the book version is, but last time we chatted, I was like, you've almost, touched every single mode of publication in the High Republic. And I think you've achieved it now, George, because the adult novel, you had YA with Tales of Light and Life. So you had middle grade, audio drama, audiobook. I don't know what else there is. I mean, unless you want to create a new form. Comics. Yep. Comics.
Yeah. And there's the YA novel, obviously, that was announced at Tears of the Nameless.
Yeah,
forthcoming. I think you're right. I think I've got the full bag.
Congrats! I got to get you a badge. I'm gonna kick it out to the community. There's some awesome creators out there who are very a lot, designers. So we got to get George some sort of badge. Help me think of a name, everyone.
Thanks for pointing that out. That's I'm pleased with that. I'm going to ask Mike Siglane now, and is there some new format I can write?
I know, right? I know exactly. Give this man a raise. I'm just kidding. I do want to talk about Tales of Light and Life really quick because you mentioned Salandra, and she kind of. I hope this isn't too spoilery. The book's been out for a while, but she's kind of passing the mantle to Rupert, and I really loved that. It was so good, and it was so. I saw the vision of like where Rupert's story can go, and it was a really heartwarming, and I liked Rupert before, but it was just so, it was very touching and endearing, and it endeared me to her even more.
Oh, and that's that. Thank you. That's lovely to hear. Yeah, I love those guys. I mean, I obviously wrote Pathfinders for Quest for the Hidden City, and I wrote Pathfinders for The Nameless Terror, and I'd love to go back and, if we'd had more time with Phase 2, I would have loved to have gone and explored more with those characters, because I really feel like Salandra had a lot to say about the Jedi and who they are and who they could be, and that whole philosophy behind the shield. It's very easy to kind of go, what's a cool gimmick I can give this character that's different from everyone else? Oh, we'll give them a shield, and that is cool. But actually, there's more to it than that. There's the shield has to embody something. There has to be a purpose, a reason why. Because truth is, Jedi don't need shields because they've got lightsabers, which kind of serve that purpose if they need them to. So it had to be a symbol as much as anything else.
Yes.
And yeah, it was talking with the particularly with Mike Siglane and some of the other guys in the team as well, and like passing that shield on became like a story we wanted to tell. How does that shield move on through the generations and carry that symbol? And that's kind of why I kind of thought, well, it's a great story to do. It's a coming of age story, which is perfect for a wide audience anyway. So a Jedi trial, but a trial in which she's not just becoming a Jedi Knight, but Rupert's being handed that to become the custodian of that shield,
right?
Because Salandra doesn't need it anymore, because she is the shield, and I think that's we injected a little bit of kind of backstory, like Salandra getting the shield from her master, and you kind of think, well, where's it going to go next? That's that's a cool potential for future storytelling. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed revisiting those characters and moving them on as well in the story, like moving them out of middle grade. I mean, obviously Salandra had gone and been in Battle of Jeddah, but moving Rupert out of middle grade and showing that coming of age process, showing the type of Jedi she's becoming. That's one of my constant kind of refrains, is like, I'd love to do more with those guys. Time will tell, I guess.
We would love to have more. I have to say, the community is basically like, we cannot leave these Phase 2 people to history. Like, we need them back. So I'll hold you to that.
I mean, it's there's a purpose to Phase 2 in the telling of Phase 3. That's obviously the way the guys had originally set up the High Republic to work was to follow the George Lucas model of tell a story, go back, do a prequel, and then go back and tell the last part of the story. And there are threads with that. I'm obviously going to be very careful today not to give away spoilers for the newly released book, because lots of people won't have a chance to read it yet. But there are definitely threads that follow through into Phase 3. That if you've read Phase 2, you'll see where they've come from and how the story elements are weaving in. And more of them to be explored.
Yes, and I definitely want to talk about that as when we get into Eye of Darkness. And again, being very careful to be spoiler conscious, but I will just say, if you've been keeping up, a lot will start to pay off, and a lot of these little nuggets of information should be clicking in your brains and will be very cool for the readers out there. So let's just jump in. I think we should just jump into Eye of Darkness. So it is out in the world officially now today. Yes. Congratulations again, getting that badge, that adult novel
raising
badge.
A celebratory cup of tea.
There you go. I got my cup of coffee here. Congrats. How does it feel? I mean, I feel like I ask this question all the time, or I've asked it multiple times when I've talked to, some of the High Republic authors and Star Wars authors. Like, how does it feel having a new book out in the world? I mean, you've lived with it for so long, and you're probably like you've said, you've been busy writing other stories that are yet to come out. But is it a marked moment for you? Do you sit and soak that in?
Yeah. I mean, it never gets old. It's I've got a new Star Wars book out. It's like it's super cool. No, it never gets old. I mean, there's there's some trepidation that comes with it, of course. You've done what you hope is your best work. Your editors are happy with it. The rest of the team are happy with it. You're anxiously waiting to see how fans are going to respond. So there's a little bit of that, but. Yeah, I mean, I'm super happy. I was honoured to be asked to launch Phase 3. It was such a cool thing, and
100%, definitely.
My background is originally in writing adult novels. Obviously, I've written for kids and young adults as well, and comic books and and audio, as you mentioned. But this is my first High Republic adult novel in the range as well, so it's kind of feels like a watershed moment there as well.
Yeah, definitely. And to kick off Phase 3, like you said, that's so cool. Like the first novel in Phase 3 of the High Republic, which it's wild to think, and I've talked about this with some of my friends, that someday we'll look back and be like, wow, like you said, it's like kind of an us thing. Like we were a part of it, like the authors and the community. It's like, it's something really special that we're living in real time. And I think a lot of people are going to look back and it's a really cool thing to be a part of.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. And I think, I hope these books are going to stick around and in the future, people are going to look back at them and they're going to feel nostalgia for this time and the community that we had and hopefully we'll still have, and think fondly of these characters as well and the journeys they've been on.
Yes, definitely. Oh man, don't get me emotional already. We haven't even started the interview.
No, absolutely. But that's what I mean. It's like, I'm only just starting Phase 3. There's a lot of storytelling to come.
Yeah. Yep. And we are chomping at the bit. I will say, though, I am pretty excited to have the rollout be a little bit more staggered. I know Mike talked about that. I think at Star Wars Celebration when the books were announced, I think a lot of people were like, wow, this is gonna be going for a while. But I like that. I like a little bit of space and allowing people to kind of catch up if they want to. So I'm really excited about that aspect of it.
Yeah, and there are still people discovering Phase 1, every day. So what this does is it allows them to catch up in real time. They can go back and read those earlier books. They can read people who haven't had a chance to read Phase 2 can read Phase 2.
Yep.
And then they can catch up in time for the big finale.
Exactly.
2025.
Yep. Definitely. I will say too, it's that age-old phrase, like, don't judge a book by its cover, but we just have to talk about the cover of Eye of Darkness because it's amazing. Epic.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Everyone freaked out when it was announced, and it's stunning. Like one of the best ones, I think, in my opinion. So, yeah.
And we took a risk because we put Markion on the front. It's like, everyone expects the Jedi. Everyone expects Avar and Elzar, and the classic Jedi pose with the lightsaber and everything. We thought let's reverse that. Let's play with everyone's expectations and because this is the book where Markion's won.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's
and you can't have that title without having him on the cover. Come on, he's the eye.
Yeah, exactly. That was my argument. Yeah, but everyone was on board from the off, and then Grant did those that piece of art, and he's
so good. Everybody loves Grant. Yeah, amazing.
I'm so lucky to work with him over the years. On he did all the illustrations for the Myths and Fables books as well.
Yes, so I know, so good.
He just gets it.
I think this is in the works and it has not been talked about yet. But the Art of the High Republic that's already come out, when the next volume comes out, so ready for that. Like,
yeah. And I didn't make it out to New York Comic Con this year, but I saw photographs of the Del Rey booth and they had the cover blown up huge on the booth, and I was like, I want a poster of this piece of art. I want that on my wall. You and me both.
You and everyone, yes. We'll will that into existence, yes. I have like a whole High Republic wall, and so I would be glad to have that up on my wall.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so us High Republic fans and people who are still getting to know High Republic, and if they haven't yet, they will soon, but we are very used to going through all sorts of emotions, highs, lows, everything in between, especially when it comes to the adult novels. So as the author of The Eye of Darkness, what can people expect when jumping into this book?
Ooh. Well, I hope what people are going to get from this is the full gamut, actually, of emotions. I've tried to take people on a journey, take the characters on a journey. As I'm sure people are expecting, most of our characters aren't in a great place at the start of this book. Starlight Beacon's gone. It's been a year. It's coming up to the anniversary, so everyone's remembering what's happened. The storm wall's gone up. The occlusion zone has just shut off a huge portion of the galaxy. People's friends, family, loved ones, Jedi are trapped behind enemy lines. No communication, no sign that they're alive or dead or what. And the Jedi are trying to figure out what to do. They're debating. They're facing. They know that their enemy. Not only has he won, as Markion, achieved what he wanted to achieve, he's also got a weapon that can kill them, and that they don't know how to fight against in the Nameless. So they're kind of like they're at sea, and different voices in that kind of in the Jedi Temple have different opinions about what they should be doing, how they should be approaching it. You've got Elzar, who's very much blaming himself for what happened. On the other side of the occlusion zone, you've got Avar, trapped and alone. Well, alone except for one small friend, in KC, the droid, and also kind of blaming herself and doing what she thinks she is best to make amends for that. She's very much focused on I don't need to be the Marshal of Starlight Beacon. I don't need to be a leader. I just need to be a Jedi and do what Jedi do. Which is not easy on, when there's Nihil everywhere and, patrols and you can't move freely. So she's having a tough time. But also Markion and Gira. And surprisingly, Markion, he's the guy, I say, he's just won. You'd think he'd be happy, you'd think he'd be celebrating. But Markion is a guy who thrives on chaos. And actually, there's a pivotal kind of moment in the book, but I don't think this is much of a spoiler, where he talks about Markin's not a guy who talks about his feelings very often. There's this moment where he kind of just lets a little bit out, and he says, to win I had to become my enemy, because he's now in charge of this whole sector of space. People are looking to him for leadership. They're expecting him to, he's won. He's cordoned off this whole occlusion zone, and now he has to run that, govern it. And he doesn't want to do that because that's not Markion Rowe. That's not what he's not in it for that. So and that's the thing. That's the whole thing. It's like, he's had to become like the Republic, or that's what the direction is being pushed in. And he doesn't want to be there. So he's in an interesting place as well. So it's quite a somber novel in the sense that you start and everyone's on a downer. But Belle's out there on the frontier, angry at what's happened. Burry's there because he's worried about his friend, trying to keep him on the straight and narrow. Yeah, I wanted it to be a character study. That was the whole kind of approach to the books. Like hopefully some big, great action set pieces, lots of fun and lightsaber battles and mysteries unfolding and all of that. But within that, I wanted to really get under the skin of some of these characters and explore how they were feeling in the aftermath of all the shocking things that had happened at the end of Phase 1. And then see where that led, but also, we work as a team, and there's quite a lot of kind of planning ahead and working out that trajectory with the other guys so that I can set things up for them to pick up and run with in the next 2 books.
Sure. I was just going to ask that too. Like, is that freeing to you, having that sense of structure laid out for the future novels? Or I guess my question is more like, being the first book in Phase 3, what was that experience like, sitting down to write this kind of like first chapter, right? And doing the setup. You did say it's a character study, which I would wholeheartedly agree. I love my boy Bell. I love Burry. There's a lot of emotional beats here. But I guess, like, what was that experience like? Is that something that like energizes you? Is that kind of like a mind thing you got to figure out to like how far can I really go? Because I know that I'm only telling one part of this whole story.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's an element of discovery to writing as well. So the process of writing any kind of book for a big franchise like Star Wars is that you outline the book first before you write it, and you debate that outline with Lucasfilm, the editors, the story group, Del Rey, and the rest of the High Republic team. So you get a lot of notes, a lot of feedback, and you shape that thing. But then when you sit down and write it, other things start to happen because you realize, oh, okay, so I knew that this guy was going to be angry about this or upset about this, but actually that's putting a spin on his behavior here, and it's starting to influence the way I'm writing the character, and you start to move things on a little bit. So there's, you can't. What am I trying to say? I suppose it's you have to let yourself be free in that. I suppose, and Cav's been talking a lot recently about kind of zero drafts, and the concept of like just batch it out, get the first draft down, and then polish it, and and that's very much how he works. And I did a bit more of that with this, in the sense of like, okay, well, I'll follow where my instincts are taking me, and then I'll talk to the guys about it, because you always know it's not done in one thing. Writing a Star Wars novel, especially a book like this, which is setting everything up for the phase, you get that draft down, and then you go and talk to everyone, and you say, can you read this? Can you have a look at where this character's gone? You've obviously got to stick to the broad beats of the outline, but things shift slightly and emphasis changes, and there's lots of conversations that go on with especially with the people who are starting work on the next book, because they're thinking about, well, where's that character going to be when I pick them up,
right? To
take, and where do they need to end my story? So you start having conversations like, okay, well, I thought this guy was going this way. He's doing a bit more of this. Does that work? Will that work with you, with what you're doing? And we have, some really great conversations, and everyone wants to be accommodating as much as possible. So they'll, we'll all do it for each other. We'll say, yeah, that's really cool. Keep doing that, and I'll pick it up, and that allows me to massage the story this way when I get it. And then there'll be other moments where they go, that's going to clash with what I've got here. Is there any chance we can pivot? And you go, yeah, of course there is, because that's teamwork.
100%.
So you go back in and you rewrite as you start to consolidate everything, and you've seen the general direction of travel for each of these characters from that kind of early draft, and then from the conversations, and you shape it. So it's great. It's a bit like having a support structure.
Yeah.
With these other High Republic authors, because we're all of us, and Mike and the editorial teams as well. But what we all want from it is to tell the best story we can tell, collaboratively.
Yes.
So while I wrote Eye of Darkness, and Eye of Darkness is my novel, it's not my story, it's our story. So there are things in there that are very much me and my expression of how I write Star Wars. But there are, I didn't come up with all of that in isolation. None of us do with any of these books.
Sure.
They're that's it's a team effort.
Yeah.
So it's definitely not free. It's free in the sense of like when you sit down to write an original novel and it's just you and a keyboard. But I like the challenge of it, and also sometimes it really helps to know where the edges of the sandpit are.
Yeah. Yes.
So that can like having a narrower lane can actually make you a bit more creative sometimes, because you've got to come up with creative ways to get around the things and still to do the things you want to do in the framework you've got.
Right. I'm really glad you said that, because I feel like there's something to be said for the sense of freedom you can have when you have boundaries sometimes. And I'm a musician. I've done music, and I know I work in an industry that is very you need to have boundaries. It needs to do this. Like there's a certain purpose to this creative thing. But there's a sense of freedom that you can have when you know what those boundaries are, right? And so that's really cool that you said that. And I was getting vibes, like I feel like I'd never really thought of it like this, that the High Republic is almost like a writer's room for like a show, right? Like there's a bunch of people in a writer's room, and then one person gets the credit for the episode. And I've heard, I've listened to, I know The Office, I've listened to the Office Ladies podcast, and they talk about all the time that where it's like, oh, they'll talk to writers and they say, yeah, my name's on this episode, but like this person came up with this joke and it was very collaborative. So I was getting, vibes of that in that answer. So that's really cool.
It's very much a writer's room. I mean, and that's not to undermine,
Sure.
the work of individuals within that,
Definitely.
I guess it's unlike a TV show, writing a full-length novel is quite a personal journey as well, because it's you in that book for a long time. But it's definitely a team effort, certainly in terms of structuring that overall story.
Yeah, and having that support network is like just at your fingertips. Like that's awesome.
They're great guys, all of them.
Definitely. George, what do you think it is about the Rowe family in particular that has readers so fascinated? Obviously, Markion's at the center of this story. Marta was a huge part of Phase 2. What do you think it is about them that just has people so enraptured?
It's a good question. Everyone loves the story of a making of a villain, don't they? What is it that can send a person down that path? What is it that can turn a person into someone who's prepared to do the horrible things that Mark and Rowe's done? And also, villains always think that they don't think they're the villain. They think they're the good guys, doing the right thing. So I think the Rowe family. What I loved about Marta in Phase 2 is, and the Path of the Open Hand is showing the quite kind of like benign origins of where the Niles start, and how through someone's personal manipulation, really, but for personal gain, they become radicalized. And then by becoming radicalized, they start to make enemies and see enemies even where those, people might be trying to help. And then, you end up with the Battle of Jeddah and everything that comes after in Path of Vengeance. And, you see how the Jedi have to act because, the Mother has manipulated the path to such a point that they have to act, and that kind of enshrines that kind of that relationship between the two factions, and the kind of the tete-a-tete that continues, and then over time, like Markion doesn't really know all, or he's not really, like reflecting about the path and the journey that the path have been on, and he just knows that he hates Jedi. And
right.
and let's not tolerate the Jedi to live. But I also think what's great about Markion in particular is he's not kind of a villain in the sense of, you know, like the Sith. I mean, not only is he not a Force villain, but he's the sort of villain we've not seen before in Star Wars. You know, you've had generals and, you know, armies and, you know, fascinating characters like you know, just had in Ahsoka, Thrawn, you know, who's, you know, this strategist and great military man. And then you've had kind of Anakin Skywalker and his fall and the Sith and the Inquisitors and kind of the dark side of the Force as polar opposites to the Jedi. But Markion's not a villain like that. He's a guy who, like I mentioned earlier, he thrives on chaos for chaos's sake. He thinks that's how the galaxy should be, and, you know, and he should be at the heart of it. You know, he's a narcissist, and, you know, true to their name, he's nihilistic, and that's, you know, it's very different. It's like, I think, you know, it's one of the things I was trying to address in Eye of Darkness when you see him struggling with the fact that he's now in charge of this huge domain, and you know, he never wanted to be that. He doesn't, because he doesn't think they should exist. It's almost like, you know, he's lost by winning. And I think that's a huge kind of difference to what we've seen in villains before. That was the beauty of these guys. It's like they're not something that the Jedi have ever had to deal with before. They're like absolute chaos,
right? And the goal of an anarchist isn't to like create a new government; it's to have things be torn apart and
exactly. And, you know, it's you know, the Jedi are called the Jedi Order. You know, order versus chaos. It's enshrined in, you know, in their name. That, you know, they're and the Republic. You know, it's all about order and structure, and Markion is the complete opposite of that, and they just don't know how to deal with him.
Sure,
it's not like it's not as simple as, you know, we want this sector of space and we're going to leave you alone, because he's still out there. He's still doing things. He's still sending raiding ships out of the exclusion zone. You know, he does something particularly horrific in the early stages of the book that I'm not going to spoil for people. And they're like, "But you've already won, dude. You know, haven't you already got everything you want? Why are you still doing this?" And they just don't understand. And I think that's fascinating. An enemy who, you know, you can't predict, you can't understand, you don't know what they want. That's scary.
Sure.
It's as scary as the Nameless, really.
Sure. And the fact that he has the Nameless at his beck and call, that's part of his strategy, that just makes it even more terrifying, right?
He's a true enemy, and it can destroy them. Yeah,
for sure. It was a great way to launch the phase. I think everyone is going to love being reunited with a lot of our favorites from phase one once again, in very different circumstances, obviously. But excited to see where things go. Definitely excited for your YA offering coming up, and what all is going to come from this whole initiative in the future.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I can't give anything away, but some of the stories the other guys are working on are just they're immense. I mean, everyone's going to have a lot of fun, and, you know, a lot of heartbreak, and, you know, a lot of hope. That's you know, as we always say, and, you know, like Star Wars is about hope, and that's true of the High Republic as well. That's what, you know, that's the thing that the Jedi cling to in these dark moments.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm going to put it out into the galaxy now. I know not a lot of the comics have been announced, and those kind of get announced differently than the novels, but I would love another graphic novel from you. I think The Nameless Terror, as more people are jumping into phase 2, it's a lot of people's favorite thing, just from phase 2 in general. And I continue to hear people interested and stoked about it. Oh, it's so good. So
thank you. Yeah. That's lovely to hear. Yeah, I mean, I'd love to. Obviously, you know, just been announced that I'm doing a Qui-Gon graphic novel.
Yes, yes, that is very exciting. That's coming 2024, right? Next year.
Yeah, I think it's April, May time.
Okay.
I can't remember the specific date, but yeah, it's around that time. And there's obviously there's a few little, I can't stop myself building relationships between stories. So there's Qui-Gon. There's some kind of, he's looking back to the Battle of Jeddah, put it that way, in places.
Whoa,
So
okay.
There's some links.
Okay, great. I'm going to call that an exclusive right now. So. All right. George, you did this last time you were on, and I ask all of my guests this question. What was the last book you read? What are you currently reading? And what are you planning to read next?
Okay, so the last book I read was called A Sail by Ian Cameron Esselmont. And it's a what I call a big fat fantasy. So kind of, like a 700 to 1,000 page fantasy thing. And it's actually book 6 in his series of the Malazan Empire. And I adore those books. They're he created a world with his friend Stephen Erickson. And Erickson wrote 10 novels, again, all like 1,000 pages long, set in this world. And then Esselmont wrote 6 novels set in this world, and they kind of interrelate with each other. And this was the final book. So that was I thoroughly enjoyed reading that. I've just started reading a book called Ghosts in the Hedgerow, which is a book about hedgehogs. And I read a lot of natural history books, books about the environment, and this is it's quite sad. It's about the decline of hedgehog numbers, what people can do to help, exploring why hedgehogs are declining. So it's a very different book to the previous book, and planning to read next. I've got so many to choose from. I always tend to kind of dip back into like M.R. James over Halloween and Christmas. Okay. So that's probably what I'm queuing up next.
Great. That's awesome. Well, we've talked about this in the past on the show when I met you in person, but we still got to get our tabletop simulator game of Star Wars deck building game on. So I'm going to hold you to that. We should try to do that sometime.
Oh, I'm so up for that. I'm tomorrow, in fact, I'm going out. My friends invited me to play Shatterpoint as well. I haven't had a chance to play yet, so I'm going out tomorrow to buy the Inquisitors little warband.
Oh, nice. Okay, good.
I'm going to kind of paint those guys up, and we're going to try and have a game before Christmas. So.
Oh, fun! That's awesome. Yeah, we talked about that too. I was like, "Have you started Shatterpoint?"
Yeah, well, I was looking forward to it last time we spoke. I think.
Yes.
It's now out, but I've not had a chance to engage with it. So
yeah.
So that's also next for me.
All right, that'll be in our private email exchange later. Well, thank you, George, so much for joining us. It was an absolute pleasure. I hope you have a great rest of the year and excited for what's to come in the future.
Thanks so much for having me.
I always have a great time talking to George. I truly hope this is not the last time he's on the show. I know it won't be. It won't be the last time. We always have so much to talk about. But make sure to grab your copy of The Eye of Darkness, which is out everywhere now. And please, if you need someone to talk to about it, send me a DM, send me an email. I would love to hear your thoughts and just chat about and nerd out about the book. I know even on the online space, it's kind of hard to be super open with spoilers and everything, but that's why DMs and emails are a beautiful thing. So if you need someone to chat to and freak out about The Eye of Darkness, please hit me up. I'd be happy to talk about it. I want to give a special thanks once again to my community contributors, Jay, Christy, and Connor, and to be sure to check out Quentin's Etsy shop, Q&A Props, for some absolutely stellar Star Wars items that deserve a spot in your collection. I will be back here next month with yet another Star Wars author interview, a first-time guest on the show, which I'm very excited about. So happy reading, and I'll catch you guys next time. Take us out, Casey. Thank you so much for listening. For more of my content, visit my website at thisdadreads.com for full book reviews, interviews, and articles. Follow me on socials at thisdadreads on Twitter and Instagram. This Dad Reads the podcast is produced by Aravis Industries and me. Special thanks to my editor, Jeremy Tuttle, and to Coma-Media for the use of their song Bounce. If you like what you've heard, please subscribe on your podcast platform of choice and leave me a 5-star review. It really helps. Catch you next time.